You are listening to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, where it's all about education, support, and coaching for adults with ADHD. I'm your host, Zena, a late diagnosed ADHDer, here to help you unpack the challenges, frustrations, and the positive side of living with ADHD. With my no BS approach, I'll help you to better understand your unique ADHD brain and how you can work with it to feel better, increase your self-confidence, improve your relationships, and ultimately achieve your goals. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Navigating Adult ADHD. So happy to be here with you guys today. Some days I just love recording this podcast. I feel very excited to talk to you all. I really wish I could see you guys and we could have a real in-person conversation. But nonetheless, I still get very excited. And for any of my woo-woo people out there, it is 111 as I start recording this. Sometimes I'm like, what does that mean? And I jump on Google and go down a rabbit hole. But I always think it means something good. So we're going to have a great episode today. We're going to have some fun together. And we're going to talk about something that I think is so needed, something that I coach my clients on all the time, and I got to coach myself on this sometimes too. And that is our capacity and managing how much we've got in the tank. And when I say how much we've got in the tank, I'm talking about our mental, emotional, and physical energy that we have. Because it's a limited resource, my friends. So I love how the universe works sometimes. I literally just finished coaching a client before recording this with you all. And that client came to our call today and told me how, come the weekend, she was just exhausted. In her words, she said, I was absolutely done. I had nothing left to be able to do the laundry, to get the groceries, to do things that I wanted to do. She told me how she'd had this list, all of these things that she wanted to do and things that were going to help her make progress towards her goals. But come the weekend, she was so exhausted, physically and mentally drained. She wasn't able to do those things. Can you relate to that? Have you ever, had a really intense week at work? Maybe you got other, things going on in your life. And come the weekend, you're just glued to the couch or lying in bed. That's it. Maybe you had these grand plans of all these things that you wanted to do and, needed to get done. And none of that happened. I know I can definitely relate to that. I actually shared I think it was a post on Instagram, maybe it was a story, I don't know. But I put something on Instagram over the weekend and I took this photo of myself and it was me and I was in my partner's black hoodie and I had the hood up and I was in bed just watching some Netflix. And I took a photo and I posted how, I had taken the entire day on Saturday just to refill my tank because I was feeling quite drained and I had done a lot of peopling. I had done some very mentally taxing things that week that weren't a normal part of my week. And I was just sharing with, people on Instagram, and I shared it on Facebook as well, that I just needed to refuel and take time out. And this is what it looked like for me today. And I got a lot of response. So if you do want to come hang out on Instagram, navigating.adult.adhd, I share some real shit. I really do. I just share the behind the scenes in the real life as well as, some really good content on ADHD, of course. So come hang out. But anyway, I shared that and got a really good response. And I had this podcast lined up and I thought, you know what? That's perfect timing. So that's what we're talking about today. I want you to imagine your phone. I've got an iPhone sitting right here and I'm on that thing a lot. If you were to use your phone for 12 hours straight, what would happen? Right? The battery would die, right? The phone would literally power itself off. That's it. It would stop working, right? Unless you, of course, pause and you go plug in the phone and you allow it to charge and re-energize. Right? Your phone has a limited capacity, a limited amount of energy that it has. And every day you recharge it to be able to use it again the next day. Okay? that is the same for us as humans. We have a limited capacity. So my definition of this is your capacity is the amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy that you have available to function each day. Okay? Now, every single human on the planet has a different capacity. And that capacity will vary throughout different phases of life. And for women, it's definitely going to differ at various times of our cycle, right? We will already notice that there are certain times of the month where we're like, maybe more productive than normal or feeling better or, able to do heavier weights at the gym. But then there's other times where we're like me at the weekend, where we literally just want to be in the hoodie and sitting on the bed and doing nothing. Okay? And for adults with ADHD, our capacity is different to people who don't have ADHD. Okay? That makes sense. Our brains work differently. So of course, our capacity is going to be different. There is a beautiful quote from Sari Solden, and she is the author of the book, A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. I think that's the title or something like that. But anyway, she has this incredible quote. I'm going to share it with you. And that is, you have ADHD. Allow yourself to have ADHD-related difficulties and needs. Mic drop. I really want you to hear that. I want that to sink in. And I want you just to have that in the back of your mind as we're talking about our ability to do things today and how much we're trying to do and able to do, but also the expectations that we place on ourselves or perhaps even that other people may try and place on us. Okay? I'm going to read the quote again. You have ADHD. Allow yourself to have ADHD-related difficulties and needs. All right, my friend, let's do a quick refresher. So us adults with ADHD, we have less of three things: less dopamine, less norepinephrine, and less serotonin, okay? These are three very important chemicals in our brains that are responsible for things like motivation, drive, satisfaction, well-being, mood, and sleep. And those chemicals, they also contribute to our ability to executive function, right? The secret to adulting, which is getting our brain to do things like make decisions, solve problems, plan, regulate emotions, organize, all of those things, okay? That comes from our executive functions. So when we've got less of those three things, it means that we're going to experience times of having less motivation or drive, a lower mood, and challenges with sleep. So I like to give a visual picture of this, and I always draw it out on my whiteboard in a coaching session. But if you were to imagine a neurotypical person, okay, somebody without ADHD, they wake up each day and their tank is half full. Now, people with ADHD, we wake up each day and we've only got a quarter of that tank full, okay? So somebody else wakes up, they've got a half a tank. We wake up, we've got a quarter of a tank. Now, everything we do is either going to add to that tank and put more in it, or it's going to take away and remove from that tank. So for example, if you take ADHD medication, that is one way that you might add to your tank, right? And increase that amount. If you have a high protein breakfast, that might add to your tank as well. But having to prepare that breakfast and make it, that might use some of the energy in that tank. For example, I've got this friend Greg, and he is a marathon runner, loves to run. He's crazy about running. So for him to go for a run, it's going to use some of the energy in his tank, but during the process of running, he's actually going to produce more. So what might cost him 2 coins of dopamine when he goes for a run, he might produce 4 in the process. So although it's costing him something and taking something from the tank, he's actually putting more in. That's a winning example, right? Imagine you were driving your car and you're just not stopping to get gas. You're just driving around doing all the things you got to do, like from here to there, and running all your errands and just keep going, right? If you keep going and going and going, eventually it's going to come to a grinding halt. And if you were to continue to run that car without ever letting it rest, if you just kept the engine going and you were just running it 24/7, it would eventually blow up, right? And I use that example, and I'm going to put it into human terms, because when we don't pay attention to how much mental, emotional, and physical energy we have in our tanks, what happens? We end up burning out. Or we find ourselves on the way to burnout and having entire days or entire weekends where we're barely able to function and we're glued to the couch, right? Now, this applies to all humans, ADHD or not, okay? If you don't listen to your body, if you don't allow yourself to rest, to refuel, and by that I mean like get adequate sleep and food and have time with your loved ones and time spent doing things you enjoy, right? When we don't do that, the walls, they start caving in, right? I see so many of our ADHD community overworking and overdoing, especially for other people in our lives, right? Or telling themselves that they should be doing more. And when we're telling ourselves, oh, I should be doing more, I should be able to get more done, like that is mentally draining. It's so mentally taxing on us. And what happens when we're overworking and we're overdoing, we are literally driving ourselves towards burnout, to breaking down. My friends, you have got to learn to pay attention to how much you've got in the tank. All right? And I hope that by the end of the episode, you will understand how you can do that and what that looks like and why it's just so important. So when I go to something in the evening, when I have to people out in the world with people in the evening specifically, I will come home and I will always need to unwind. I need this downtime to recharge my battery. And it's like when I was thinking about this on my walk this morning, I was thinking it's kind of like my battery has overheated by having to be out and socializing, and it now needs time to cool down. So for me, it's like this combination of, going out, I get overstimulated because, say we're in a restaurant and I'm meeting friends. And although I love being with my friends, like I'm having to think and answer questions and like pay attention to all the sounds and the noises and what's going on around me and the comings and goings and all of that. Make decisions for food and drink and all of that, right? So there's this overstimulation. My brain's kind of working overtime to process all these things, but also I'm an introvert. And for me, it requires more energy, more from me to be out doing this and peopling, especially later in the day when I've already been using my tank all day, when I've already been using all of my ADHD functions all day and they are kind of worn down. They're a little bit tired. I got less in the tank. Just the other day, I was talking to an incredible 14-year-old girl, and she's in the process of getting her ADHD diagnosis. And she was asking me if it was normal to feel exhausted after school each day. So she was telling me how her mum picks her up, and on the drive home, her mum will ask her, how was your day, and what did you do, and what did you learn, and all these things. And she said, I just don't have it in me to answer. She's like, I just got one-word answers, and I just shut it down. Like, I got nothing. And she comes home each day, she has a snack, she lies in the lounge, and she just needs to chill out and do nothing for a little while. And then she's good, like she wants to tell her mom about her day and all the things. And that makes so much sense, right? Because all day she has had to use her executive functions. She's had to pay attention, she's had to, do things, take action, focus. She's been using her tank all day long, and it's just run out of gas. So that downtime after school, it allows her to put more back into the tank to be able to keep going for the rest of the day. Now, if you have comorbidities of ADHD, so if you have another mental or physical challenge that you are dealing with, maybe depression or anxiety or chronic pain, your capacity will likely be lower, right? The amount in your tank that you have available each day to do all the things with, that will likely be a little bit less. You may need more rest. You may need, more time spent just doing nothing, and that's okay. Or time spent, watching Netflix or with friends or however you refuel. So you want to be thinking about, where am I spending my energy each day? And am I spending it in the places that I want to be spending it? I recently had some neck and shoulder issues, and I'm still navigating this, right? So I had a whiplash injury many years ago, like as a teenager, and I've had on and off neck and shoulder issues ever since. And recently it just flared right up to the point where I can't sleep with a pillow some nights. I cannot have a pillow. I have to lie just on the bed with no pillow. Sometimes I will even get up and, I will do some EFT, some tapping to manage my pain, which was in an episode a while back, and to help me get back to sleep. So having this pain and this, challenge that I'm navigating, it has made it, more difficult to sleep. I was also getting a lot of headaches, which is pretty draining. But of course, just having pain and dealing with that will be draining the tank. Okay, for anyone who's had an injury, you know how draining that is mentally, emotionally, and physically. So for me, I decided to stop doing some things. I decided to stop spending my energy on workouts. I'm still doing my walks, but I just decided I'm not going to work out for a little while. I'm just going to take some time off. And I spent more time resting and just really listening to what I needed to help me through that time. And it's so interesting because upon reflection, in the past, sometimes I've really tried to push through, to keep going. And I've really delayed how long it took me to be able to work through that. This is one of the fastest times. I'm kind of towards the end of it now, having almost overcome it and not really experiencing much of it at all. And I'm able to sleep with a pillow again. But when I look back, I'm actually, sometimes this would go on for months and months and months. But this time, it's been such a short window because I really did pay attention to what my body needed and what I was physically, mentally, and emotionally able to do with this happening. So if you've heard of the spoon theory, which is something I've mentioned here before on the podcast, this is a very similar concept. And the spoon theory is an excellent concept. So spoon theory is a metaphor describing the amount of physical or mental energy that a person has available for daily activities and tasks. And it specifically talks about how it is limited. We have a limited amount of spoons. Okay? So we're making breakfast for a neurotypical person that might only cost them 1 spoon. For somebody with ADHD to make breakfast, it might cost us 2 spoons. And if you've had a really bad sleep the night before, or maybe, it's the week before your period, that making breakfast activity might cost you 3 spoons. Okay? I teach clients to think about it in terms of a tank, and we will draw a tank on my whiteboard, and we will look at the activities that are draining that tank and taking away from that tank. And we'll also explore what activities add to the tank and pour into it. So, laundry. That is one that so many of us, myself included, can have challenges with. And that can be one that is very difficult for us because it requires so much from us to be able to do that. And it's not somewhere that we often want to spend our energy. Morning routines is another one. I hear from so many people who want to have this amazing morning routine, but if we put too many steps in our morning routine, if we expect too many things to happen, doing too many things we think we, air quotes, should do, it can be very difficult and taxing and take too much from us, right? And when our brain looks at that and goes, it's going to cost me so much mental, emotional, physical energy, I just am not going to do it at all. Our brain literally makes a calculation based on how much it's going to take from us before it engages in activities. Our brains are so smart. Okay, so for many ADHD brains, tasks like laundry or morning routines, they could be pretty taxing. They could require a lot. And often our brain just says no, okay? Now remember that tank is a representation of the amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy that we have available to us each and every day. Okay, each day we wake up, it's going to be a little bit different. It actually does differ day to day. That's completely normal. So if you have a hugely productive day today, but not tomorrow, that is normal. Okay? And when we expect ourselves to be able to produce and do the same amount every single day, and we always base it on this huge high expectation, that's not realistic. That's just not real life, and that's not fair on you. My friends, sometimes we need to remember, we've got to lower the bar for entry, all right? Now, nobody else can tell you what your capacity is. Not your boss, not your parents, not your friends, okay? Nobody can tell you how much you've got in the tank or where your limits are. Now, if we have difficulties going on in our life, that's going to drain the tank, okay? It will deplete us mentally, emotionally, physically. Whether that is, you might be going through a divorce or a separation, or your partner gets sick and you've got to help them while they're sick, but also you've got to take, the slack and pick up all the jobs and things that they would normally do around the house. That's going to require so much more from you and your tank, meaning you got less energy and effort to spend elsewhere. If your work is going through a redundancy, if even that changing the boss at your work, I've got a client in that position and her boss is being replaced right now. It's a very stressful time for everyone. If you have an elderly parent, perhaps, an argument with a friend even, those things can and will use a lot of your mental and emotional energy, and therefore they're going to take from your tank as well. Okay? So what that means is you're going to have less capacity. Okay, you might not be able to physically do as much that day as you would have same time last week before all of this. So last week, I think it was last week's episode, I shared with you how, it was in the Saying No podcast. So I shared with you a story about a friend who had reached out to me and wanted to catch up. And I had said no to her because I literally didn't have the capacity for socializing when she asked to. And if I'd gone, I would have drained my tanks, and I was already very close to running on fumes. So I said no. And that wasn't easy. I talked to you guys I shared with you all the brain drama I had about doing that. But had I have gone, it would have made my next few days so much harder. Often we learn this the hard way. I'm going to be really honest with you, okay? And by that I mean we learn by overspending our tank and running into a negative, right? I have learned that I can't do things every single night after work, that I can only do maybe 1 or 2 things a week. And even then I have to judge it based on the week and what's going on and where I'm at. Otherwise it drains me too much and I get to the weekend and this used to be all of the time. Right, as I would get to the weekend, I had given so much at work that I would be ruined come the weekend. I had nothing left. Right, sometimes we don't find our limits until we are depleted. So I want you to think about what drains you. What drains your tank? What makes you feel tired, physically, mentally, or emotionally? What tasks take a lot from you? Maybe it is doing the laundry, or it's cooking dinner in the evenings. And what activities energize you and add to your tank? Do you have enough rest time? And is that rest time actually restful? And what people that you spend time with add to your tank? What people give you energy? And what people deplete your energy and take away from your tank? These are really important questions to answer. It is important to know how we can add to our tank when it's getting low. So for me, this often looks like resting, which could be like getting a really good night's sleep. So I get to bed really early and I go to sleep early, or maybe I delay my alarm the next day and allow myself to sleep in. Like extra sleep sometimes is part of resting for me. But also having downtime to watch Netflix or shows and just not having to do anything. Cuddling my cats, that gives me energy. That seriously pours right into my tank. Spending time with my partner is one of the people I get energy from and recharge with. Walking, especially in nature. Playing games with my nieces and my brother. Watching a family movie with the kids and having some popcorn. Like, these are things that add to my tank, that fill me up and give me energy. So understanding and managing our own capacity is a huge part of having our own back. It is important and crucial in developing self-trust. Now, we often compare ourselves and what we can and can't do to other people, and we expect our capacity and our ability to do things to be the same as them, right? We think that we should be able to do things just like other people, especially neurotypical people. My friends, again, I want to remind you, you have ADHD. I have ADHD. This means that our capacity is different. Now, many of us growing up, we have developed this idea that our capacity should look like what was modeled or demonstrated to us. So my dad, he was always overworking. He worked such long days. And then he would come home and he would be absolutely knackered at the end of the day. He would literally have dinner and go to bed. That was it. Like, he would get up super early and go back to work. And then come the weekends, like, he was ruined, so knackered, but instead of resting, you know what he would do? Every single weekend, he would go out on the farm and he would work all day and then be absolutely buggered by the evening. And I got messages from him that resting was lazy. So anytime I was lying around not doing something, he would often say, like, you're being really lazy. Why don't you go do something? And he would say things to me like, I can't stop because if I stop, I won't be able to keep going. I won't be able to start again. Right? And if you've had something similar in your life, just imagine, how that is impacting the capacity you think you should have versus the capacity that you actually have. People pleasing and saying yes when we really should have said no. Not having clear boundaries. Those are things that also take away from our mental, physical, and emotional energy. They drain our tanks. Okay, now if that's something you really struggle with, definitely go back and listen to the last 2 episodes. We had one on people pleasing, we had one on saying no, we've got a boundaries one coming. But if that is something that you really struggle with, then it may require work with an ADHD coach or a therapist. Because learning to honor your mental, emotional, and physical energy with ADHD, it's everything, my friend. What is it costing you when you deplete yourself? When you run yourself right out of energy, when you run your tank dry, how does that impact your relationships, your health, your personal goals? How does that impact your happiness, your self-esteem? I remember every single job that I had before I worked for myself, and I've been working for myself now, I think 9 years. But every single job where I worked for another employer, I prided myself on always going above and beyond for that employer, for that boss, whoever, right? I was really proud of that. But now I think back and I think about how, some of the clients I work with do that too. And I realized that it was coming at such a big cost to me that I wasn't aware of at that time, because I would give everything I had each and every day, and I would be depleted by the end of the day. I would go home. I usually could not exercise after work because I was just absolutely stuffed. I'd go home. I'd be like a zombie on the couch. I would eat crap. I'd have these like great plans to eat a healthy meal, but I'd eat crap because I didn't have the energy to cook. And then I was overspending the energy in my tank every single day at work, going well beyond the job description that I had. And like I say, sometimes the only way we learn this is to kind of go too far and then reflect back. My friend, this is your job to manage this. And it's really going to help you so much with your quality of life. It's going to get so much better when you learn to manage this. Are you saying yes to too many things? Are you peopling too much? Are you trying to juggle or do too many things right now? Pay attention to the amount you have in your tank. Do you have the mental, physical, and emotional energy for this? And if not, where do you need to say no? Where do you need to put some boundaries in place? Where might you need to stop trying to please others and just take a step back? Where might you need to ask for some help or get some support? When we're mindful of our tank, when we honor our capacity, we actually experience so much more balance in our life. So my friend, my ask to you this week is please pay attention to how much you've got in your tank, how much you have in your energy spend mentally, emotionally, and physically. And are you spending it where you want to spend it? And are you saving enough for yourself? All right, my friends, huge love. I'll speak to you soon. If you are loving what you're learning here on the podcast, but you still feel like your ADHD is holding you back, I can help. Using evidence-based coaching tools and my own experiences, I'll help you to manage your emotions and feel better, to increase your productivity, grow your self-confidence, and create the life that you were meant for. Visit zenajones.com/thrive and schedule an ADHD support session to get started.